let's talk about my experiences while competing in Brazil. I had competed a fair bit before moving to Brazil. I had some good results prior to going, but when I moved to Brazil, my biggest competition experience came at the Rio Open. It was my first outing as a brown belt, so it was a new experience for me, competing in Brazil, competing as a brown belt for the first time as well. There was a lot of weight, and I didn't do that well. I didn't rise to that occasion. And there are a lot of people from all over the world that go to Brazil to compete in that Rio Open, and at this specific time, there was a guy named Gen. And Gen, super awesome brown belt at the time. He was there to compete. He buzzsawed his division. He killed everyone. And I had trained with him a good bit, but I was sulking in my room, and he came knock on the door. I answer, and he's like, hey, I have this DVD for you of your match. I filmed it for you. I was wondering if we could talk about it. And this was really weird. I was like, yeah, come on in, no problem. So we sit down, and he sits down and says, I think maybe you try to submit your opponent too hard. The submission is a gift your opponent gives to you. It's not something, if your opponent doesn't give it to you, you don't get to submit them. And I remember thinking, like, submission is a gift your opponent gives to you. All right, this sounds straight like a fortune cookie. It sounds like something I would open up, and I remember kind of being like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I took his DVD, I listened to him, and he left. And it's funny, he was just emotionally, intellectually so much further down the journey than I was, that I wasn't ready to receive that message at the time. And so I'm gonna put it a different way, and maybe it'll connect. Maybe there won't be as much of a language barrier. Maybe you can receive this piece of information long before I was ready for it. So what Gen is saying, or was saying, is that you don't have control over your opponent. And I think that this realization helps you in the actualization of your jiu-jitsu, actualization of your submissions. And I think it's one of the reasons that some of the highest level martial artists are some of the most humble people. And it's because it forces you to focus on yourself. You have control over yourself. And initially that comes in the form of being able to produce while grappling. You know, I see a lot of my students that they know how to do the armbar, they know how to do the Americana, they know how to do a cross collar choke. They get to mount and they just smash their opponent, they smush them. The person tries to bridge, push them back down to the floor, and all of that space is so crowded. They crowd that space so much themselves, they crowd it that they don't give an opportunity for their opponent to make a mistake or make space so that you can get your hand in. If you're laying on the person in mount, how do you get the hand into the collar? If you're squishing them so hard that they can't extend the arms, how do you armbar them, right? And so the people that have eaten their humble pie over and over again, it extends beyond the mat. You know, like, hey, that person's being not cool, right? You know, you want to be angry with them, but you don't have control over them. You have control over yourself, so you're like, whatever. You know, you turn the other cheek. You know, somebody cuts you off while driving, and you don't have any control over them. You have control over your car. Stop your car. Slow your car down. Are you really angry because you had to touch your brakes? Who cares? You know, like, you have control over yourself. And so allowing your opponent the opportunity to move will open up opportunities for you to submit them. And I also think that is one of the reasons that surfing is so popular, particularly in Brazil. When you surf, and I'm not a surfer, so this is totally, you know, like, from my point of view, I'm not a surfer. But when you surf, you're surfing the wave. You don't get to dictate where the wave goes. You only get to dictate where you go on the wave. And when you think about that, you know, and you think about that, you know, let's surf, you're surfing people. You don't control where the person goes. They make that decision. You control where you go on that person. Whether you're taking their back, you're putting the hand in the collar, right? You want it to be beautiful. You want it to be smooth art. And that comes from understanding that you have very little control over your partner in the sense of smashing them, but you have control over your body and how you interact with their body. And so think of that, and when you think of it that way, you will be in position to get a lot more submissions, because you're not going to try and control them. You're going to control your body. Very important for a smaller opponent versus a bigger opponent. Big guy, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 220. If I want to smash people, that's an option for me. But there are a whole bunch of people that don't have that option. And how are they viable in jiu-jitsu? There are controlling, there's leverage. A lever is a mechanical device that multiplies force. Force is still part of the equation. Your lever in a lot of instances is fixed, right? So how do you beat someone when their unmultiplied force is greater than your force? You surf them, right? Leverage is part of it, but surfing is part of it as well. Keep that in mind.